So welcome everybody to the rematch, the voting edition. I appreciate everybody taking the time to come on the show today, and we're going to talk about a lot. There's so much I want to talk about, and this is a great panel and a great discussion that we're going to have. I want to start off with Elder Craig Hodges, and so I want to be able to explain to you, because I talk about you a lot with younger players now, and younger players study you now. You know what I mean? So they study your activism. They study, what you meant, because now activism is kind of the in thing to do. You know what I mean? People, it's a little bit more trendy now. But back when you were playing, it really wasn't trendy like that. You know what I mean? And you didn't have that support when you was speaking out and you was trying to get things done and everything like that. And I want you to talk about that aspect, about how things have developed and how they've changed since the time when you were playing.
Yeah, first of all, brother, just thank you for putting this panel together and continuing to move forward like we need to.
Definitely.
In unity as a people, man. For me, it's a blessing to have grown up in a household that was about the civil rights movement. My granddad was organizer for the union and the like. So for me, it was a natural progression to get a chance to go to Long Beach and study Black studies, and to be able to use the platform of basketball, not only in the pros, but also in college. When one of my classmates was murdered by the Long Beach police, it was the same thing. So it's just a continuum, man. And that's why when I tell you it's so great that you're doing this panel tonight, right before the debate, is a good thing, brother. And I just support you in whatever manner I can, and as well as everybody else that's on the panel. Let's move this thing forward, because voting is only one, like they tell us at the Fed, that's only one of the tools in the toolbox.
Right. Definitely. And Miss Tierra Ruffin-Pratt, we was on a program for, what was he on just a little while ago? We were doing so many Zooms, I forgot which one we was on, but we was on a program just a little while ago, and I was saying how, I really give a lot of respect to yourself, the WNBA, for the leadership that you have shown, and a lot of the activism that we're seeing right now that the players are doing. Y'all did that before. So even when I was talking about how with the media blackout, where, after the back-to-back killings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, y'all did that before. That was a few years ago. But Dave, there's a lot going on right now. You know what I mean? We're talking about we have the debate coming up. We talk about the elections, but we also, it's interesting because, we have a show that we do, The Collision, where sports and politics collide. And you read this anonymous quote today, and I was thinking about it, and I had to look it up since you read it. But it was interesting, though, because it was the notion that the athletes using their platforms and speaking out and everything like that, was negatively affecting the ratings. And, mainstream America was turning the channel, and, you hear certain people always, you reflect the ratings and stuff like that. What was your reaction? You asked me today on the show what my reaction. What was your reaction to reading that?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm going to keep my comments brief, partly because I want to hear what everybody else has to say, and partly because, Etan, I think you hear me talk enough. So why would I overdo that? I don't want to wear out my welcome. I had a couple of reactions to it. The first was just the profound condescension towards the athletes themselves, as if they don't know what it is they are fighting for. I mean, the arrogance to say something like that. And I got to be honest with you, I'm sure there's some great agents out there, and more power to them, but I've met more than a few agents in my day who have this level of condescension towards the athletes that they're supposed to be representing. And so I really heard an echo in that of some people I've come across in my time covering the NBA. So that was one thing. And I want to say, I want to call it white arrogance too, because maybe it wasn't a white agent, but the whiteness was just seeping through the pores of that statement. And it was pretty intense. The second thing that I thought when I was looking at it was that there was so much ignorance in it as well, because they have done studies about why the ratings were not as high as they, and there are people who are saying, if you go woke, you go broke, and people aren't tuning in because of politics. That's actually not true. The people who've done the research on this, they say, wait a minute, sports ratings are down across the board. It's not just basketball. It's NASCAR, for goodness sakes. The ratings are down even far worse than in basketball. Ratings are down across the board because of the pandemic.
Right.
because it has disrupted people's lives. That's the number one thing. You know, if you're living through this pandemic life, like I know my family is, there's no more like the whole family gets together to watch the game. There's no more go to the corner bar. There's no more collective view of sports. So the change in our viewing habits is rooted to the fact that our lives have been upended, for goodness sakes.
Right.
Not because there's a Black Lives Matter sign on the court. So that was my thought, that it was rooted in arrogance and it was rooted in ignorance. And that's a terrible combination.
I definitely agree. But Eric, what's going on, Eric? And, you know,
Hey, what's going on, Etan?
What's going on, sir? You know, I've seen you coming into your own, and it's great to see. And I want to ask you, you know, from a standpoint of, you know, voting, I've seen you in a lot of the things that you're doing really push voting right now, and really push for, you know, I saw you at the march, and it's so crazy seeing you speak at a march, because I remember when at first, you know, you were quiet, you were sitting in the back, you know, you kind of let Emerald and Erica do their thing in the front, and you was kind of chilling, you know, but now you're speaking at marches. Now I see you on Dateline, now I see you on MSNBC. I think it's great, but talk to me about the importance of voting and the push that you're doing for voting right now.
Well, thank you for having me. Hi to everybody.
Peace.
Well, me coming into my own voice, because I feel like my generation doesn't know the importance about registering to vote or going out to vote. So I feel like, and we can't relate to people going, like people older than us demanding us to go vote when they're not explaining what's the point. What my vote is gonna do to impact the world? They feel like that's how we younger generation feel. You understand?
Yeah. And you know, we've talked about this before, as far as like the impact, and it's interesting because, you know, when you have the conversation, it's like, who is talking to you? You know what I mean? And that can kind of change if you feel like you're energized to vote or not. That could, you know, change if you feel like your voice matters, or if you should even stand up for anything or anything like that. And that's why it's always important to have the right people talking to you. And it's just amazing. And Tierra, you're back. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Great. There we go. I definitely I was like, oh, we got to get her fixed. But listen, I want to go back to the question I asked you, because really, y'all was at the forefront. So you heard the question, you know, how did y'all get everybody together in doing that? And do you think that your efforts as far as the WNBA are getting overlooked sometimes, because I see so much of this collective effort consistently for years? You know what I mean? Before back when me and Dave would be trying to, you know, talk about trying to encourage one NBA athlete to say something or two, but y'all just all were together. Talk about how that really came about.
I just think this league has always been a leader and in the forefront of anything that's going on in the world. So it's pretty easy for us to all come together. We're not a very big league, so it's not a lot of players. It's 144 of us. So if one or two doesn't agree, it's most likely that everybody else will, especially with us being a minority league in every aspect, whether it's women, blacks, gays and lesbians, whatever the case may be. We're always fighting for something or someone. So I think that made it easy for us to all come together as a league. And back in 2016, when those other back-to-back murders happened, the league didn't agree with it. The league tried to fine us. The league didn't want to be on our side with those type of issues. They didn't want to speak out. They didn't want us speaking out. But we did it anyway. It didn't really matter if we were fined or if they would try to do anything to us. We continued to push because we knew it was bigger than us, and that still applies to us now. We took a whole season to just dedicate it to those being killed by police and social injustice and everything like that. And everybody was on board from 1 to 144. We all came together because we knew it was strength in numbers. Everybody has their own agenda and are fighting in their own way. But we knew that if we all came together and got behind one thing or a couple things, that it would be a lot easier for us to do it. And the league would have to get behind us one way or another. So like I said, this league has always been at the forefront of things like this. And this year just gave us a bigger voice and more power because there wasn't a lot going on. And then our brothers at the NBA, they were doing the same thing. So it just amplified it 10 times more with them doing it as well.
Right, right, and and after what happened with the Atlanta Dream, lady, I can't remember her name. We talked about it for so long, Dave. I don't know why I'm skipping her name, but when she came out and said that she was pushing for the WNBA not to embrace Black Lives Matter, not to allow the players to be able to use their voices and their platforms, and I was kind of shocked that she came out so strong and said that so publicly. It's not like she was caught on tape. And somebody recorded her. She literally was talking to reporters and said that and thought that it was going to be okay. But the way that y'all reacted, explain to everybody how y'all reacted to that. And I thought y'all reacted brilliantly.
We just all came together and kind of got on the bandwagon behind the Atlanta Dream team, because we knew if they weren't going to fight, then there was no need for the rest of us to try to fight for them if they weren't going to be in the forefront of that aspect. But we got on with Reverend Warnock, who was running against her in that race, and we all just was like, we're going to back you in any way that we can. We ended up wearing both Warnock shirts to our games and doing everything that we could to kind of support him, to kind of just give the FU to her, like, Black lives do matter, and your league is pretty much 80% Black. Your team is pretty much 80% Black or more. So for you to come out and say that, it was a blow to the face for us. So we did everything we could to kind of get behind the Atlanta Dream and the Atlanta community to show that this league isn't going to stand for that. And it worked for the most part. We're doing a lot for the Atlanta Dream and standing behind them in any way.
I think that's great. I think that's really commendable, and I got to give y'all so much respect for that. Now, Miss Imman, she's part of the BasketballNews.com network. And she has a great podcast that she does from Toronto called Dishes and Dimes. And I want to ask you this. We've had a lot of conversation. We was talking about the finals, right? But as we're coming up on this elections and you're in Toronto, does it feel like, you're like the above apartment under like a meth lab, looking at everything that's going on in America, and y'all are, you know what I mean? And you're up there like, I can't believe these cats are doing all of this. Like, what do you think when you're looking at American news and American politics and what is going on in this country? What is y'all conversation?
It's a lot. I don't want to pretend like Canada doesn't have its own issues. We do. I say white people are white people everywhere. Right. So white supremacy it doesn't stop at a border. But so we continue to have our issues. I would say with the election specifically. Like I mentioned this recently. Canadian elections campaigns last 50 days for federal elections. 50 days is what you're campaigning. They're in and they're out, whereas Americans are allowed to vote 55 days out from an election. So I think just the campaigns that happen, the size of it it's always so much more. But first of all, I should say that, thank you for having me here. I'm honored to be amongst all of you here as well. But yeah, so I think what's going on in America, certainly it's scary because as the far right continues to grow in America, and people and the rise of the alt-right and just right-wing politics taking this, I don't want to call it taking a turn, but growing in this way, it doesn't stop at the border. This continues. We live in a globalized world. So I don't want to pretend like Canada doesn't have its issues. Having said that, America is different. Our borders are closed for the time being. I hope you guys keep your masks up, and just
stay down there.
About America right now more than anything. White supremacy doesn't stop at the border, but hopefully COVID keeps a little. We got a barrier for that.
No, I definitely understand. I mean, and talking about it's hard when you're trying to encourage people to go vote. And let's talk about this. You're trying to encourage people to go vote and exercise their right to vote. And you have a younger generation that, like what Eric is saying, what is the point? Like, people are saying, like, why are we even involved in this? And so what is your response? Let me ask you, Dave, what is your response to people who feel, because I know we share frustrations. We'll be on the show sometimes and it'll just be a therapy session. We'll just be frustrated with so much. But how do you continually push young people to be engaged and, invested and excited about the voting process when they see this mess that is going on?
Oh, I'm curious what Craig has to say about this as somebody who works with young people on the regular. The one thing that I always try to get across to people is that is to look at voting as your minimal responsibility. Like people say, voting is the least you can do. I take that phrase and I try to turn it into something positive. Like it's the least you can do, but it's also the start of what you can do. And so it's like, yeah, you go in and vote, but this idea that that's the end of your civic responsibility, that it's the end of your responsibility as somebody who wants to struggle to see a better world, then you got to see it as just a starting point. You have to figure out what it is you want to fight for in the positive sense, whatever that issue may be, and then you fight for that issue. And on your way to the demonstration, or on your way to the meeting, or on your way to the rally, or on your way to the picket line, you stop off at the voting booth and you take care of business so you could have the best possible chance of winning what it is you're fighting for.
Definitely agree. And talk about how important local elections are, because you talk that's really where things are changed, where you have to be able to have an impact where you actually live is locally. And Mr. Hodges, I want you to touch on that aspect.
And that, to me, that's the critical vote, is being able to be involved on what's happening to you on an immediate basis, man, because a lot of times this thing is so convoluted to the point where young people are sophisticated with handheld phones and handheld devices that they can see through this mess. And they know that it's, taxation without representation is tyranny. And we've been under a tyrannical regime ever since our existence here. And now it's to that point where we have seen a brother that was in office, and then we get the polar opposite. Right. And we know why it is, and that, Dave called it what it is. It's white arrogance. And at this point in time, I just say that, we're at deliverance, man. It's not even, we say it's about voting, but you can look at the two choices that we have to let us know that time is up for old white men and their racist policies. And that we can see from sisterhood, I say Tierra and LeBron James should be our next ticket. So when we talk about being able to galvanize our strength as a people, everybody has utilized us. Go vote, go vote, go vote. We go vote, and then we have no resources. So my thing is, let's put a little bit of money behind politicians. That's what I've done on the local level. Go out and get with the brothers and young sisters who want to do this thing and have the right reasons for doing it. We look at it, man, how long Joe Biden been in there? 40-something years. Trump been stealing for 50 years. So, we got a thief and a crook. What we going and we want our young people to buy into thievery? No, I'm not with it. We need to, once again, we have the resources now. Now we have to be more mature about our decisions and how. And once again, I want to applaud the sisters from the WNBA for having the courage to make the moves that they did. And the brothers, we could still continue to waver, and that really bothers me, man, because that shows a little cowardice in us, and we shouldn't be that. We're warriors.
Well, I think one of the things that things aren't definitely where we want them to be as far as the level of non-cowardice. I agree with you as well. But I also highlight the strides that guys have made. I was really proud of how LeBron, in particular, has carried the burden and the blessing of being in the position where he is. And because it's both. I mean, Dave, we've talked about this before, how it's a burden and a blessing. And when he's the top person, everybody else kind of is watching and follows along from him. I mean, when MJ, and we don't have to spend too much time on MJ, but when he was when he was at the top, he was quiet, so a lot of other guys was quiet. You know what I mean? Now LeBron is using his voice, and we see the level of threat that he is, and the level of attention that he gets, and the level of hatred that he gets. And I made the comparison before of Muhammad Ali type of hatred, like people rooting for him to lose only because they disagree with his politics, and somehow him losing is a win for them. And I haven't seen that since Muhammad Ali to that level. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with you, brother. And like you say, the position, and the beauty of today is that with social media, you have immediate backup. You have a instantaneous group of followers who can go out there and whether they be in Beijing, being in LeBron, Beijing, Brazil, and every place else on the face of the earth and in the universe.
Right.
So he's that brother, man, and I applaud him. And I just say that right now we at a point in our history, man, where it's time for us to grow up, and you can see it in brothers like LeBron. That I had a chance to talk to Dr. John Carlos about it, and he told me that when he saw me go to the White House, that he seen that was one of the seeds that they had planted in 1968. And that's what it was. I was sitting at the crib as a little boy watching them do their thing, and I was like, man, I want to know what that's about. And
Right.
for me, it was one of those things, and it continues to be that, the more we study about ourselves, the more we become enthusiastic about the future of what we can do and what we bring to the table.
Definitely. And Eric, you told me before about what it felt to you to see LeBron James, but also all the players even wearing the I Can't Breathe shirts. And I always bring that up because, we'll be in different circles, different panels and things like that. And people will say, like, what does it mean if a player wears a T-shirt? Does it mean it's a big thing? Bill Rhoden always likes to say that. You know what I mean? Like, is that really activism? That's not like Jim Brown type of activism. That don't really mean much. And I always say, well, why don't you ask one of the family members of victims of police brutality what it means to them, and you'll hear a whole different story. So, Eric, I want you to tell me what did it mean to you to see LeBron James and Kobe Bryant and the whole Lakers team and everybody wearing I Can't Breathe shirts?
I felt like my father's words was heard from all around the world. Like, he inspired people to like put that shirt on and use their platform to bring awareness to the situation.
Right. And so one of the things that you told me before too, though, was like, and it was, you said that you was describing how you turn on the TV and you were saying that people can't imagine how this feels to turn on the TV. And every time you turn it on, you see somebody explaining why your father deserved to die. And then you see a basketball player of LeBron James, Stafford, and everybody else saying the complete opposite of saying that, we taking up the cause with them, of risking being fined, of risking ridicule and everything like that, to say that they hear you and they see you and that your father's life matters. Like that when you said that to me, I was like, wow, like I haven't heard it expressed that way. But talk about that aspect of it, because a lot of people they don't understand. You know what I mean? Like they just don't get it.
Like but it gave me like a symbol of hope. Like now, like people seeing what's going on in the world today, and they taking notice. Like it's like more than what they using a platform for now and stuff, and rather than standing back and not listening and going on about their lives until it happened to them. That's always the case. Like people don't understand what other people go through because it don't happen to them, and then when it do happen to them, then it's like they just stuck.
No, that's true. And that's why, we do our best to really encourage a lot of the younger athletes to continue using their voices. Now, Tierra, we talk about the criticism, because whenever you speak out on something, you're going to be criticized. And as an athlete, you just have to know that and be comfortable with it. But y'all were receiving criticism, it's interesting. I think it was Sue Bird that I heard saying that, she was like, the WNBA players are so used to being scrutinized about everything, a little extra criticism doesn't bother him at all. That's how she said it. But would you agree with that sentiment?
I definitely agree. It doesn't matter what we do in the WNBA. One, we're always going to be compared to the guys, or we're not going to be as equivalent to them. So even when the guys weren't speaking out and we were, people weren't telling us to shut up and dribble, but they just weren't listening.
Yeah.
And it comes at a point in time where you just get tired of sitting back and not doing anything and not saying anything. And I think that's where the guys are coming in now. They're just like, at this point, what more can happen to us if we don't speak out? You know, like it's time for us to speak out and say what we feel, because the league can't run without us, regardless of if they don't want to give us jobs. But if it's no LeBron James in the league, do you think people are still going to watch it at the same amount of rates as they would if he was in the league? So people like LeBron James and the top caliber athletes stepping up and speaking out, it's only so much that the outside world can do. It's only so much scrutiny that people can give, because it could be me. It could be a LeBron James that gets killed, because when that uniform's not on, at the end of the day, I'm a black woman, he's a black man. So people don't always see it as that. They just think, oh, that's LeBron James, it couldn't happen to him, or that's Kevin Durant, it couldn't happen to him. Like, it can happen to them, because at the end of the day, they are black men and we are black women in the streets. And regardless if that uniform is not on, people don't see it as that. They don't care what you are outside of that uniform and playing basketball on that court or on that field. So why not take the scrutiny? People gonna say you're a trash basketball player, whether you're top of your sport or not.
Right.
So you take that and let it roll off your chest. But at the end of the day, I'm a black person in this country and in this world, so it doesn't really matter what you say. Your scrutiny can't bother me, because a lot of people won't understand what it feels like. And the people that are scrutinizing are the people that don't have to go through what we go through as black people. So I think it just became a time where people were like, we're going to talk, we're going to speak. We're not going to stay silent, because staying silent isn't helping us. Like, so now what? So we're going to speak out, and what you're going to say? Oh, shut up and dribble. You don't need to speak on politics. Like, okay, you can say that too, but what makes you more equivalent to speaking about it than me? Like, your job is just a different title than mine, but we're both still people. Like, so what makes you higher qualified than I am to speak about something just because I'm an athlete? Like, it doesn't make sense. So I think people are just tired, and athletes are tired. So we're going to speak up and speak our piece and say what we need to say. Whether you listen or not, whether you agree with it or not, we don't really care. Especially, I think, the players in the league, the WNBA, and now the NBA stepping up as well. Like, you can't play without us. You can't make money without us. So regardless if we speak up now or don't speak up at all, you still can't make money without us. So either you're just going to take it and roll with it and let us speak, because at the end of the day, outside of that uniform, we're people, or you're going to criticize us at the same rate, even if we do speak out. So why not just keep doing what we're doing? Like, I don't get it. People think that doctors and police officers and politicians are more qualified to speak on something that they don't really know. Like, they don't live in this world as black Americans or brown Americans. Like, so how can you speak on if it's right or not? Like, if all lives matter, then black lives should matter, because if black lives don't matter, then all lives don't matter. So how would you say that it doesn't matter? So I don't know. As athletes, for me, I'm going to speak up, because at the end of the day, when I take that uniform off, if I'm pulled over by a cop, I'm a black person. Right. And that's all that matters at the end of the day.
No, that's definitely true. And I just want to let you know, Eric said he had to go and handle his nephew. He said he apologized. I was like, you ain't got to apologize. You know what I mean? It's all good. But I read the way his maturation, the way he is able to speak more, and people, you know, it's people don't understand the trauma. You know, and I started working with family members of the victims of police brutality, survivors of the police brutality. Emerald told me don't say victims anymore, say survivors. And that's really what they are. They're survivors. And people don't understand that, you know, you have a situation where something happens and, you know, the cameras are all focused. And then the next thing happens and all the cameras go away and they're still sitting there dealing with the situation. And they're young. They're like kids. You know what I mean? And it like hurts my heart. But being blessed to be in a position as an athlete to be able to, you know, to help them in any way, it's really, you know, one of the blessings and the burdens that we talked about, Dave, of being an athlete. And I wanted to ask you, Imman, you know, you heard Tierra talk about the criticism, and I read this tweet from Tobias Harris, and I was so, you know, happy the young fella, you know, tweeted this, but he said, I'm a bit confused. So because we play in the NBA and have a salary, we can't talk politics. He's like, but how do you earn your salary as a doctor, janitor, lawyer, teacher, plumber, store manager, cashier, entrepreneur, server, etc.? how does that automatically make you more qualified to discuss politics than me? And I thought this was just a great quote, but, do you see, when you're talking about, I know usually you're focused on the Raptors up there in Canada, but do you see that the fans as a whole don't value the opinions of athletes? So if an athlete is pushing people to go vote or pushing people to, shed light on this situation that happened with police brutality or something like that, do you still feel that same thing in Canada that we're talking about here in the States of athletes supposed to just stay in this lane and stay, stick to your craft and not venture into this area of everyday life that everybody else weighs their opinions on?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like I can't tell you how many articles I read after the 2016 election about middle America interviewing anyone in any small town, any coal miner, anybody else. And their opinion mattered so much on the 2016 election, but then an NBA player or WNBA player doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. It's clearly not about the profession and about something bigger than that. But I think the devaluing of athletes' opinions isn't the only thing that happens. I think it's devaluing of athletes' humanities as a whole. So I don't think we can separate that from just their opinion. It is their bodies. It's like I'm saying there, like I'm not sitting in front of 3 athletes in front of me, but it's livelihoods. It's everything to do with the athlete that we completely dehumanize, which I think there's obviously a long, sordid, ugly history about that can't be divorced from the way that we talk about NBA players and WNBA players right now. And it happens in Canada in the same way that it happens in the United States. There's really no separation there because the histories are so intertwined.
That's right.
I'd love to say that it's better here, but it really isn't.
That's interesting. And, and this, I want to segue into this topic because I see a lot of, and and me and Dave, we talk all the time. So we have these discussions a lot, but, I would always say that I see the stay in your lane, shut up and dribble type of stuff from both sides. Whenever you say something that side disagrees with, no matter what it is that you're saying, it's not something that's just only to the right. You know what I mean? So even right now, I see in dealing with, I'm looking and watching what Ice Cube. Now I have my disagreements with Ice Cube with what he said, but it was interesting seeing the same people who got upset when, Laura Ingraham told LeBron to shut up and dribble, now telling Ice Cube to shut up and rap. And I was like, wait a minute, you realize you're saying the same thing that Laura Ingraham said, but why is it hard to say that you disagree with someone, you know what I mean? And talk about the components of your disagreement to just jumping to, okay, this person shouldn't be speaking at all whatsoever. I mean, that's a big jump. Like help me out, Dave, because we had this conversation a lot. And why is that so hard for both sides to do?
Well, I think it's like social media giveth and social media taketh away, because social media provides all of us the platform to say what we think, but particularly on the Twitter platform, it's 280 characters. So how are you going to have a nuanced discussion, 280 characters at a time? How many times have people clapped back at you and that if you were in the same room with them, they never would have done it in the same kind of way? Not because they would have been intimidated, but just because when you're one-on-one talking to somebody, it's a different kind of discussion. Yeah. And there's an effort to try to reach some sort of resolution or common ground. And this is one of those cases. I mean, and emotions are very high in the States because of the election coming up. That's just a stone cold fact. Donald Trump has a record of racism that puts a lot of folks absolutely on edge. Right. And then into this very sensitive breach steps Ice Cube to say Donald Trump gets the contract with Black America, which also led a lot of folks to saying, wait a minute, what's the contract with Black America? And why wasn't I asked to sign on? Like, what, you call something that grand, you think it would be out there a couple years getting the Tierras and the Etans of the world, certainly the Craig Hodges of the world, to study it and give their input and all the rest of it. But all of a sudden, Cube's got it. And he says, I've got the contract. And Trump wants to hear me. And that's supposed to be enough. And so for a lot of folks, it just rubbed them very wrong and very raw. And especially because there was the thought that Trump was just going to use the association to say, you know, some of my best friends are Ice Cube. So that just set people's teeth on edge. And unfortunately, like I said, we're not in this culture where you can say, well, I agree that Ice Cube that, you know, you shouldn't just vote for one party automatically, but I disagree with the fact that he thinks Trump is going to actually take him seriously and follow through. You know, it's like we don't have that culture because
why? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong.
I know.
With,
I blame social media. I'm telling you, I do put a lot of it on how we're currently being programmed to talk to one another.
Yep.
No, that's the problem, though. Like Craig, I mean, it's, you know, you have to either. Somebody got to either be canceled or, you know what I mean? You got to be all the way with them. But even in talking about Ice Cube, yeah, there's some components of it that I agree with what he was saying. Watching him do the media rounds, I'm like, okay, you got a good point there. That makes sense. You don't want to just give your vote away. You want somebody to be able to, you know, earn your vote. I get that. But then I can say I disagree. I'm like, okay, well, we days into the election. You kind of should have played that card, you know, a few months ago. We only got a few days until it. Let's you know. So, but I can look at both and without saying, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just Ice Cube has to be canceled all together. Now he's a, you know, certain name, a certain epithet or something like that. But that's the tough part for me, Mr. Hodges. Why is it that so the way that this is right now in society?
You know, I look back, you look at when Jim Brown and Kanye, Steve Harvey, you know, they all went and hollered at Trump. And my thing is always, I wouldn't holler at the president. But one thing about when I went, it was a public situation. I'm going to let everybody know what went down. And I think that's a lot of times where we go wrong is that I have no problem you going to holler at Trump, but let everybody know, hey, yo, man, I'm getting ready to go holler at this cat. It's going to be an open and frank discussion, and it's going to be transparent. So it seems to me that, you know, I love Cube, you know, for what he's done as far as pushing the envelope forward and the like. But at the same time, we have to be more mature in these moves that we're making, man. And you know, right now I feel like we're at that point. We've already won. I want y'all to know that. We've already won. Now we're just at that point where when you're in the process of winning that championship and you know you're up 3-1, but you got to go to practice the next day, you got to go to shoot around the next day, and you got to get the work done. And I feel like that's where we're at. And we're about to receive something so powerful that a lot of us are weeding ourselves out by picking the sides that we're picking, and we can't weed them out. So we allow the creator to do that, man. So I'm happy right now. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm feeling cool right now because I'm at that point where I realize that, that 400-year period was up.
Right.
And now how do we operate in freedom? And part of the distraction is voting, census. If you really stop and look, do they really tell us how many of us it is in America? Because the more I look around this thing, I'm seeing so many of us, and I'm saying we can't be no minority no more. Because when I'm in the city of Chicago, I'm looking at black folks everywhere, not just on the west side, south side. No, we're everywhere. Go to the Bronx, go to LA. We everywhere, and that's the problem. Is that, and when this whole thing about stacking the court, you look at it, man. They've stacked the court for the next 80 years almost, man, to be able that white men will not be in power, but their laws will have to be enforced on the books. Right. That is such nonsense. When you stop and you look, by 2035, it's going to be us, whether it's black, brown, and red together or whatever. We're the majority already, but we're operating in that functional illiteracy of being a minority when we rule. If the sisters in Chicago and New York and LA don't go to work tomorrow, this thing shuts down.
No, that's true. That's true. And I think that's that divide, that we're seeing, that, both you referenced in different ways. And I really see it as a divide, and a distraction. I mean, we're seeing. I think Cube's heart is in the right place. You know what I mean? It might be a different way of strategizing that I probably would have, implemented. But I think his heart is in the right way, in the right place. He wants to do something that he wants us included in the process and not left to the side. Malcolm would always talk about, he doesn't want us to be political chumps. You know what I mean? We give our vote and we don't get anything in return. I'm with that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
But it's fitting against because and it's I don't think that it was unintentionally done for that tweet to go out in supporting Q when it went by the Trump administration to say, okay, he's on our side. He's Trump. Q didn't say that. He's like, oh, he's with us now. And then who is it? Eric Trump tweeted the picture out with them with the Trump hats on and stuff like. I'm like, wait, y'all trying hard to what I mean? But
it's similar to 50 Cent saying he don't want to be 20 Cent with Biden. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
Some people put themselves in that position.
Man, so and then our people out here on the local level, they looking at their heroes and they vibing with that, and not even knowing the background discussion that's going on that's totally opposed to what they're trying to get accomplished in their local lives. So
right.
I'm glad we on this panel tonight because we know the bottom line on that debate stuff, y'all. It's on us to take care of this thing.
Oh, well, definitely. And that's why I really love, and going back to Tierra, I love the way that, y'all are being inspirational, for an entire generation. And I don't know sometimes when you're in the middle of something, you're just doing it and you don't understand the impact that you're having. But when you see, my daughters looking up to y'all and, the younger generation is seeing and being inspired. Like my daughter is looking at Imani. She's looking at when y'all are standing up and all wearing the shirts together, and you see black players, white players, you see foreign players. Foreign players ain't even from here. They don't even know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? But they're standing in solidarity together and showing womanhood and that bond, and it's just beautiful to see. And I think that what that does is, the younger generation is being taught something completely different. Not to have that bond, not to trust each other, not to have each other's back. That's just the way that it is. And that's why it's so important what y'all are doing. Do y'all have conversations on that level of importance, or are you just kind of in the middle of it and just kind of doing what you're doing? You know what I mean?
I think we all have come in with our own type thoughts and backgrounds and what we've been through. I think as a Black community, we've all been in situations where we're taught not to trust each other, or we're taught that it's me versus you, when actually we can both win. And right. I think that's what we are taught from a young age. And I think to see everybody kind of come together, we kind of talked about it back when Blake Jacobs was shot back during the season, and we were like, one team don't want to play, but what the other team wants to play. But if we all kind of stand together and come together as one league, and we all decide no game's gonna be played today or the next 2 days, then people will take us serious. But if just one game isn't played today, they're gonna be like, well, what was wrong with them two teams? So I think as we all came to the bubble, we knew that it was something bigger than just us going to play basketball. And I think that's what got everybody in the same mindset as, no matter what we do, we're going to do it together because we're already in here together. Right. So I think that was the first thing. It didn't matter Black, white, foreign. We all kind of just understood that there's strength in numbers and unity. And when you realize that, anything can happen. But like I said, from a young age in Black America, we're taught that it's me versus you. And whoever wins is going to be the one to get out. But not thinking that if we come together, then we both can win and we both can get out. Right. So I think learning that and showing that now is showing the younger generation that it's okay to come together and do things together. And it doesn't have to be you versus me or me versus you, whatever the case may be. So I think showing that while we're in the middle of it, we may not, like you said, we may not see it and see the impact that we're making, but we know that we're doing something great. And we know that the people who came before us probably thought the same thing. Like, they may not see change now, but the generations to come, they're going to see the change. And we're thinking the same thing. Like, we may not see the change right now in what we do, but our kids and our grandkids and their kids are going to see the change. That's so right. If we stop, then they won't see it. But regardless of if it's seen right away, we don't care, because I know down the line that somebody in my family down the line is going to see a change, and we're going to make a change continually by doing what we're doing now.
Definitely. That was beautifully said. And I definitely agree. Dave, I want to ask you, how important is it for white allies, and how do you advise white allies to be allies? Two-part question, and those are an important question. You've been somebody who has been calling out white athletes to not stand on the sideline and to get in there and join this fight for a long time, and it's happened more on the women's side. On the men's side, it took a little bit of time. You know what I mean? White players were kind of chilling for a while. You had a few, recently that stepped up, but for a while, it really didn't happen. How important is it to have white allies? And then how would you advise white allies to actually be allies?
Well, I mean, I think in 2020, you saw a lot of examples about what it means to be a white ally, whether it was people marching in the streets over the summer. Remember, these were the largest demonstrations in the history of the United States. They took place in all 50 states. And we live in such a highly segregated society that the thought of people marching in Idaho, people marching in Kansas, people marching in Montana. I mean, this shows people marching in Wyoming. I mean, this shows you so much that there is a desire by the younger generation to live in a world that is anti-racist. Now, that's different than saying living in a world without racism, because we're not talking pie in the sky here. No one's passing a pipe on this panel. But the idea of living in an anti-racist world means that you respond to racism in the affirmative, to say, no, I'm going to act in an anti-racist manner and an anti-racist response to that. I'm going to fight to dismantle a racist criminal justice system. I'm going to fight to dismantle racist institutions in our society, whether it's hiring, whether it's in sports, whether it's in education. And this younger generation, which is first of all, more brown and black, the young generation, which means more white kids are interacting with brown and black people. And then the second part about that is they're also less tolerant of intolerance. I see it in my own kids. They're on a whole different mental plane than I was at their age. I don't even want to tell you what I was doing when I was 16. But my daughter's on a whole other level in terms of about the world that she wants to live in. So one of the things I would say is you got to go out there and actually you got to match your words with deeds. You just can't talk about it. The second thing is you have to be willing sometimes to do what I'm going to do in a second, which is shut up and listen. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. That's very important. And the third thing, and I think this is really important, is that white allies have to stop seeing what they're doing as if they're doing a favor for brown and black people. It has to be a commitment to being able to say, no, this is affirmatively about what I want, about the kind of world that I want to live in, about the kind of world I want my kids or my nephew or my niece or whatever to live in. And so it has to be something that you're fighting for because you believe in it in your heart, not because you got a white savior complex and you're doing charity for others.
No, very well said. Very well said. Wow. That was great. And so we'll end. I know I wanted to wrap it up. I didn't want to, keep y'all too long. But Mr. Hodges, I want you to end on this note, and I want you to give the advice to younger athletes who are looking to find their voice, and they're finding it. And they want to be able to use their platform. They've studied Craig Hodges. They studied Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. They studied all the different athlete activists, of the past and that in the history books and everything that y'all are doing. And they want to be athlete activists too. They want to be able to speak and use their platform and to stand up for something the same way that y'all did. What would be your advice to them?
I'm training a lot of young brothers and sisters here in Chicago and in Los Angeles. And one of the things that I'm telling them now, especially with this whole lockdown, is the uncertainty of your future. And that right now, the primary thing should be studying and researching things that are outside of what you normally do. Look for other things that may interest you and try to research them while you have the time during this lockdown, other than, just the normal mundane stuff that you have in school. And I think a lot of our young people, they really want to know and they want a better world. And we have the opportunity to not only mentor them, but provide them the experiences to be and the exposure for different things. So one of the things right now is training, being in condition so that when the bell is called for you to go back and play, you're in condition both mentally and physically to be able to go out and perform the way that you want to as an athlete, with the mindset that you didn't get here in a vacuum, that people have sacrificed for us to be able to get the salaries that we get, to be able to get the scholarship offers that we get, and be mindful of that. And right now, I just applaud the sisters. I applaud, Tierra for what she's done, and Sisterhood in Canada for holding down on the media end. And that's where my reference point is right now, knowing that, when you look at where we are historically, it's the rise of Black women, and that I have to be a student of that, and knowing that's why when we look across the board from a leadership level, that's why sisters are basically running the table right now. And I think Joe Biden should have put Kamala at the top of the ticket and then be vice president again, but that's another story. But yeah, brother, I thank you once again. I thank Dave, for he wrote we have the connection from the book and him writing the forward to me. And, I appreciate y'all, man. And right now is that time where the love and energy of a people is starting to come to the forefront, and it's affecting everybody on the planet because they've seen the oppression of us in America, and they know that it's wrong. So when that question and the way Dave answered it is so cool, because over the last 6 months, John Paxson has reached out on the same level. So it's cool to see that, people who have a righteous heart, man, are stepping forward, whether they're black, brown, red, brown, or yellow, man. And it's cool to be a part of it and be in the fabric of it.
That's great. That's great. Very well said. Well, I appreciate all of y'all. I appreciate y'all,
man. Keep up the good work.
Oh no, you're inspiration. You know what I mean? So I appreciate everything that you stand for, the sacrifice that you made for that somebody like me playing in the league, years afterwards can use my platform and speak out on different things. You laid the foundation. So thank you for doing you. Tierra, thank you for what you do. I know your system. I've been following you and been a fan since the Mystics, and what you've been doing, I think is great. Imman, enjoying working with you with Dishes and Dimes. Dave, you're my guy. So we're going to keep on pushing. So y'all have a good night, and thanks again for coming on the Rematch.